So good morning everyone. We are the presenter of Module 7, the Lumad's Response to the Spanish Colonial. So before we start, let me introduce myself. I am Geraldine M. Guillermo, the first presenter for Module 7. Let's start with a quote by Teodoro A. Agoncillo. It will never be possible to write the real history of the Filipino under Spanish because the colonial government enjoyed the monopoly of production of source material. According to the statement of Teodoro, the official historical record during that time is more likely about the Spanish history written in the Philippines but not the completed history of the Filipino because the unfiltered evidences and voices are not preserved. Because of this, the historians writing the history more shaped and heavily filtered by the Spanish perspective. Next, let's read the famous African proverbs. Until the lions have their own historians, the stories of the hunt will glorify the hunter. Means that the true and balanced history will not exist not until the one who were conquered finally have the right to write their own side of the story. It also means that not until the Lumads finally have their own representatives to write their own side of the story, the one who will is the one who conquered them, which is the Spanish. Next, let's read the book of Edgerton, entitled People in the Middle Ground. He believes that the tribal minorities had nurtured their own identity and history, but they found themselves lost and marginalized in someone's larger historical perspective of the narrative. In this book, Edgerton highlighted that minorities were not people without history. They had deep rooted memories and social structure and a clear sense of who they were. But when the colonial power arrived, they brought with them maps and written records and also brought a larger perspective, usually centered to the colonizers. Through this, history of minority groups is rewritten to serve other purpose. So, imbis maging bida sila is, according to the colonial story, is yung minority groups is sila pa yung naging problema. Their oral traditions were often ignored because it is not written in the official records. And also, they become lost because their identity were no longer defined by their ancestors, but how colonial government classified them as savages, non-Christian, ethnic minorities, and an inactive participant in making their own history. So the previous slide suggested that it is impossible for Lumads to write their own history because Spanish wrote the document, but Scott disagrees. So let's read in the book Cracks of the Parchment Curtains tells that we can still get some fairly clear pictures of our ancestors even though it's from Spanish colonial regime. So Scott believes that historians can still find the voices and evidences of every Lumad by critically reading the record written by the Spanish themselves. These records act as a parchment or a big wall that hides the reality. And he also believes that the Spanish records were not perfect, even though they tried to control the narrative. But this parchment has cracks. Historians can glimpse to our ancestors and use their real reaction on how they resist the Spanish colonizers. On the other hand, even though evidences are not written, it is preserved by oral traditions, epic, and stories. For example, the Olahingan and Tulilangan. These two are examples of the epic. Let's think of it as a giant time capsule that every time every elder Lumad chants these stories, they were opening a record about where they came from, kung saan nag-travel yung mga ancestors nila, how to survive, ano yung mga ginagawa ng mga ancestors nila para mabuhay, kung nag-hunt ba sila, nag-gather ba sila, what you call this, are they farming, and it also shows as a mirror of identity that when a Lumad hears this epic, they feel and understood while their ancestors respect nature.
Hi guys, I am the next reporter. I am Princy R. Balboa. My report is the initial response of the Lumads when they meet the Spaniards. We know that Filipinos today are reputed for being friendly, accommodating, and hospitable to strangers and visitors. Core question: did early Filipinos show the same friendliness and hospitality we're known for today when the Spaniards arrived? Focus, account from Butuan of 1,000 Years by Greg Hontiveros detailing Magellan encounter in Mazoa. Key source, also reference Pigafetta Chronicle and historian Agoncillo. My explanation for that was the big question we're tackling here is whether our ancestor had the same friendly, welcoming nature that Filipinos are famous for today when the first Spaniards came to our shores. We'll be looking closely at a story from Greg Hontiveros' book, Butuan of 1,000 Years. It talks about what happened when Magellan and his crew reached a place called Mazoa. We're just not using one source. We're also mention notes from Pigafetta, who traveled with Magellan, and insight from historian Teodoro Agoncillo to get the full picture. First encounter. Magellan expedition anchored near an island after seeing afar the night before. 8 natives arrived on a buluto or small boat. Their attitude was a mix of curiosity and mistrust. Magellan gave them a red carpet and small items using a stick to build rapport. Natives responded positively and went to inform their king. After seeing a fire on an island overnight, Magellan's ships dropped anchor nearby to check it out. Soon, 8 local people come over in a small boat called Buluto. You can imagine how they felt. They were curious about this huge, strange ship, but also worried and didn't fully trust the newcomers. Magellan noticed their mixed feelings, so he tried to be friendly by passing them a red cup and a small things using a long stick, so they didn't have to get too close if they didn't want to. This gesture worked. The locals warmed up a bit and went to tell their leader about the visitors. Meeting in the chief of Mazoa. 2 hours later, 2 Balanghay boats arrived with the island chief. Communicating happened through Enrique, Magellan's slave, believed from Sumatra. The chief understood him well. Pigafetta noted, in that country, the kings know more languages than the common people do. Just 2 hours later, 2 big boats called Balanghay, which were like the traditional ships of early Filipinos, came to meet the Spaniards. The chief of the island was on the larger one. The tricky part was talking to each other, but Magellan had a slave named Enrique who could help. We know think Enrique was from Sumatra in Southeast Asia, and surprisingly, the chief could understand him well. Pigafetta, who wrote down everything about the journey, said that in this part of the Philippines, the leaders usually knew more languages than ordinary people, probably because they often traded with other groups from nearby areas. Exchanges of gifts and hospitality. From the distance, the king gifted Magellan a large bar of gold, a basket full of ginger, Magellan thanked him but declined the gift. The next day, Good Friday, Magellan sent Enrique to ask for provisions and assure friendship. The king came to the ship with 3 porcelain jars of rice and 2 large of fish called orades. The chief didn't come empty-handed. From a safe distance, since they still didn't know each other well, he sent over a nice-sized bar of gold and a whole basket of ginger. These were valuable things in their community. Magellan was grateful, but he politely turned down the gifts. Maybe he wanted to show he wasn't there to take their valuables. The next day was Good Friday, so Magellan sent Enrique to talk to the chief again. He asked if they could buy food and supplies for the crew and made sure to say they came as friends, not enemies. The chief was happy to help. He brought 3 big jars of rice wrapped in leaves and 2 large fish called to the ship. Further hospitality. Magellan gave the king a Turkish-style red and a yellow robe plus a fine red cup. Knives and mirrors were given to other natives. The king invited the Spaniards to his settlement, served food and wine. They even got drunk together. Before parting, the king very happily kissed our hands and we kissed his. To thank the chief, Magellan gave him a special robe. It was red and yellow, made in the style of clothes from Turkey, plus another nice red cup. He also gave smaller gifts like knives and mirror to the other people with the chief. These were new and useful items they probably hadn't seen before. The chief was so friendly that he invited the Spaniard to come visit his village on land. Once there, he fed them well, offered wine, and everyone relaxed so much that they even got drunk together. When it was time for the Spaniards to leave, the chief showed how much they valued their friendship. He happily kissed their hands and they kissed his in return, which was a sign of respect of both sides. What this reveals. Early Filipinos did display the same warm, accommodating traits we associate with Filipinos' hospitality today. However, Agoncillo points out, this hospitality was misunderstood by Spaniards. Spaniards thought it signaled inferiority and obsequiousness, leading them to believe colonization would be easy. So, what does all tell us about our ancestors? The short answer is yes. Early Filipinos, like the Lumads in Mazoa, were just as warm, accommodating, and hospitable as Filipinos are today. That trait isn't new. It's being part of our culture for centuries. But here's an important point from historian Agoncillo. The Spaniards got the wrong idea about this kindness. They thought our ancestors were being overly nice because they felt inferior or wanted to please powerful stranger. This misunderstanding made the Spaniard think it would be easy to take over the colonize the Philippines. And that's the end of my discussion. So my other co-reporter will report their part and bye.
So, to be continued with the Module 7 entitled Lumad Response to Spanish Occupation. So, the second question is all about what were some methods used by the Spaniards to subjugate the Lumads. So, the method used by the Spaniards to subjugate the Lumads are the use of religious missions, father and friars, divide and rule tactic, use of local aliens or native soldiers and guides, use of military force and threats, relocations and control of settlements, and the last is encomienda system. God, gold, and glory. Some people say these motives propelled the European colonizations of the Orient. Others would try to footnote that the Spaniards came to the Philippines to preach their God and get the gold of the people for the Spanish glory. The statement may make sense because one very effective ways used by the Spaniard to subjugate the natives has been the work of friars. Manuel Tuwagons once jokingly said in his paper presentations that the Spaniards came to save our souls, as if everyone was going to hell. So, ginamit ng mga Kastila ang mga pare para hikayatin ang mga katutubo na magpalit ng relihiyon kapag naging Kristiyano ang mga tao or ang mga Lumads ay mas madali silang kontrolin ng mga Kastila. So, the second is the divide and rule tactic. So, the success of the Spanish colonizations was always attributed by the historians to be a result of the missionaries and the superiority of the Spanish arms. But history should not forget the divide and rule tactics used by the Spaniards. So, pinag-away-away ng mga Kastila ang iba't ibang grupo ng mga Lumads para mahirapan silang magkaisa or para mahirapan silang labanan ang mga Kastila. So, the third is use of the local aliens or native soldiers and guides. In the subjugations of the Moros in southern and western Mindanao, the Spaniards made use of the native soldiers or recruited from the Caragan of the Surigao, and moreover the practice of the Spanish explorers of the befriending local chief and the subjugation could not be achieved without the help of the native aliens. So, this statement says that nagkuha sila ng mga katutubo para maging sundalo at patnubayan ito ang tumutulong sa kanila na ang mga lugar ng mga lumad. So, kumuha sila ng mga tao para gamitin ito para mas mapadali nilang masakop ang mga lumads. So next is the use of the military force and threats. The civil military government, the encomienda systems, and the ecclesiastic authority, controversies point out that the Spaniards began to settle on Mindanao and create structures of governments in the various areas that affect the Lumads. That is, the situations on the Mindanao began to have the characters of its own, mainly influenced by two. So, kapag tumanggi ang mga Lumads na magbigay ng buwis, ay gagamitan nila ito ng mga sundalo or espada at barel para mapadali nila itong masakop ang Lumads or para makuha nila agad ang buwis kasi torture sila kasi para mas mahirapan ang mga Lumads laban sa mga Kastila. So next is the relocations and controls of settlements. So the presence of the Muslims sultanates in Sulu and Maguindanao in the transfers of the colonial capital of Pilipinas from Cebu to Panay in 1568 and the tens of the Manila by the 1571, thereby moving the center of the gravity of the colonial rules farther north, leaving the newly converted southern communities in the backwater of the colonial administrations. So, hindi lang relihiyon ang dahilan nila. Gusto rin nila ng yaman at benepisyo ng mga katutubo or ng mga lumads para kumita ang mga Kastila. So, sinakop sila gamit ang mga yaman nila or benepisyo para mas mapadali nila itong mawala ang mga lumads. So, the last is the encomienda system. So, the encomienda eventually became a hated system. The most explosive of these revelations was the complaints of the Father Marte de Rada to the Spanish kings about the actuations of the Governor General Guendo de Lavazares. On June 21, 1574, Father Marte de Rada wrote one of the most momentous documents against the colonials of the officialdom addressed to King Philip the Second, or decrying the abuse of the inflicted by the Spaniard civil and the military officials on the natives in the Philippines. Ang pinapaupa ng mga hari ng mga Espanya ang mga tao at lupa sa mga Kastila or opisyal. Pinipilit nila ang mga katutubo na magbigay ng mga buwis at magtrabaho ng sapilitan.
So, good day everyone. I'm Bing Andy Saldivar, the port reporter, and my topic is Spaniards under strategies. According to Father Bernan, missionaries were first viewed with suspicious because they arrived alongside with Spanish colonizer, and many locals feared they were connected to encomenderos. Spanish encomenderos went to Mindanao mainly to enrich themselves. So, encomenderos, nagpunta sila sa Mindanao to control the Mindanao. Sila ang nag-collect sa tax and they forced laborers from them. And friars were seen as having different intention. And some friars protected the natives. The Jesuits missionaries were the first introducers of strategy of evangelization. Evangelization means telling people about God's loves and God's news of Jesus. So, missionaries were religious men sent by Spanish Catholic priests who came to Mindanao to teach religion, education, and way of Spanish of lives. Their first strategy is they began by using song to teach Christianity, especially to the children. The second strategy is they teach how to pray in Christianity ways and gain the support of influential people para mas spread ang ilang pagtuo. And the third strategy nila is nagtukod sila og small primary school, including one in Cebu in 1595. So this school and primary help from educated Christian leaders in local communities. So kaning seminaries is where people study to become a priest or religious leader. In 1882, Father Juan Ricard raised concern about the treatment of new converts in Mindanao. He proposed that they be accepted from tax. He wanted them to free from tax. He wanted them free from forced labor, and he wanted them not to join the military to help them focus on religion kasi military service could distract them from learning and practices the religion. Years passed by. Some datos sent their son to the primary school, and soldiers were assigned to keep the missionaries safe.
So this strategy works because education and military protection helps missionaries spread Christianity and keep both missionaries and new converts safe.
Good day everyone, I am Nicole Milbar and today I will discuss on how the Lumad responded to the coming of the Spaniards. How did the Lumads respond to the methods mentioned above? So the Lumads responded to the coming of the Spaniards differently from the Moros. Unlike the Moros who strongly resisted, the Lumads mostly tried to survive by adjusting new rulers. So even before the Spaniards arrived, the Lumads were already dealing with the Moros. Some Lumad groups were paid tribute to avoid attacks and some were treated as subjects. So because of this, Lumads used to living under the powerful groups. So when the Spaniard came, the Lumads' responses varied by place. Lumad coastals and mountain Lumads reacted differently. The Lumads responded to Spanish rule in different ways. Most of them chose accommodation, which means they adjusted or adapted to the new situation to survive. Instead of fighting openly, many Lumads used resistance through withdrawal, quiet actions, or small revolts. Some practiced subterfuge, pretending to cooperate with the Spaniards while secretly protecting their own traditions and way of life. In few cases, there was retaliation, where some groups fought back. However, most Lumad groups were weaker in terms in military power, political influence, and population. Because of this, they avoided open conflict with the Spaniards. Only few groups such as Mandaya and Caraga became known for active fighting. At first, many Lumads did not see Spanish missionaries as a serious threat. In some areas, missionaries were accepted into existing communities, and some Lumad even chose to become Christians. Groups like Bukidnoons and Manubos practiced creative accommodation, meaning they neither fully resisted nor fully accepted Spanish rules but adjusted in ways that allowed them to preserve their identity. The Lumads showed creative accommodation in responding to Spanish rule. This means they accepted some Christian ideas while still keeping their own beliefs and traditions. They allowed priests into their communities but continued to respect their native shamans and spirits. Instead of choosing only one belief, they mixed Christian practices with traditional rituals. Some Lumads joined Spanish settlements, but they did not completely leave their old way of life. They still kept their forest homes and continued traditional farming in the mountains, while also farming new lands. Leaders accepted Spanish titles, but they remained loyal leaders to their own people. In public, many Lumads used Christian names to avoid trouble, but among themselves, they kept their native names. Even in marriage, they followed both systems, one by having a Catholic ceremony and one by a traditional ceremony. When Spanish control became too harsh, the Lumads usually chose to avoid fighting and focused on survival instead.